Mike D'Antona, I'm the interim acting superintendent for the district. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. It's something that we did here at a recent CC meeting was a request to offer opportunities to connect with iReady in particular. As you guys know, or if you don't know, it is an assessment that all of our kids take across grades kindergarten through 8th grade in mathematics and grades 3 through 8 for reading. Some of our schools also do use it in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade as well. We do have 2 of our team members are going to be here tonight to help translate, so if you need Chinese or Spanish translation, we are here to support. I also want to extend a big thank you to Ms. Cummings for opening up her space and offering us this opportunity here tonight at 107. So thank you very much, Ms. Cummings, for doing that. This is the school for helping organize our room. I'm going to share our presenter in just a moment. But I'm going to extend the microphone to Esther from our team for anyone who needs Spanish translation.
Buenas noches a todos ustedes, gracias por estar aquí. Si necesitan traducción en español, con gusto les haré la traducción. ¿Alguien que necesita español? ¿No? Ok, yo estoy aquí atrás con usted para darle la traducción. 大家好，有没有需要中文翻译的？今天有需要中文翻译的吗？有一位 ，OK 好，我们就是在后面那边，可以帮我坐在那边。
Thank you. So the reason why we wanted to hold this tonight is because we just finished our second diagnostic assessment just this past week. On the 9th was the final day, although for some children that may have been absent, it extends all the way through Friday. But in large part, vast majority of our kids at this point have completed the second diagnostic assessment. And we invited Sally Maya, who is a professional developer from iReady, to talk to you guys this evening around what that means for you guys as parents, and what those reports can provide you as a parent, so you're a little bit more knowledgeable around the expectations for our kids, but more importantly, what that means for you as a parent. So I encourage you to ask questions. Sally is here. I'm certainly adding my own little piece as necessary, but I thank you guys for being here, and I'm hoping that you get some really good information out of it tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Good evening, parents. I hope everyone is doing well. Am I coming in clear? Thank you so much, District 25 team, for inviting me to speak to all of you.
So is that too dark?
I'm okay if they're okay.
Parents, are we okay?
Chris, is there a way to do just one set?
Maybe just one?
Yeah, I think we should put them back on.
He's gonna put stage lights on.
Okay. Yeah, it's dark.
Nice little story.
I guess this is what it feels like when you're doing a performance, but I like to see the faces in the audience.
It was like a power outage. Right?
No, I think it's still too dark, Chris.
It's okay, we can go with putting them on, I think, Chris.
Yeah.
I wish I had a talent that
I know.
you guys. There we go.
I know. Okay.
I think it's still fine, you can still see the screen.
Yeah, it's better. Yeah.
Yes, Sally, you would.
So, my name is Sally Maya, and I work for Curriculum Associates. I do not work for the Department of Education. My job is to support educators and administrators in ensuring that they are using data with their curriculum to help promote the success of every single child at D25. That is my role. If you have any questions at all about any of the content that I'm going to be sharing with you, that is my information. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me at smaya@cainc.com, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. So just very quickly, what we're going to be discussing today, we are going to be talking about this iReady diagnostic screener. What is it? Full disclosure, it is not something that is just used in D25. It is used across all 32 districts in New York City. But we want to make sure that when you see the results of your children, you know exactly how it works and what it is we're trying to do. I'm going to review with you how to read the family report, the math, as well as the reading results. And I'm going to give you some resources as families to help you promote the growth and learning of your child. So let's just begin with what is this thing called iReady, right? I'm just curious, show of hands, how many of you have heard of the program in some way or form? Okay. Well, that's good. So let's make sure we know what it is and we know what it's not, because that's important as well. So when we talk about iReady, there's actually 3 different components to it. The first part is what we call the computerized adaptive diagnostic. I'm going to explain to you how it works, but essentially it is a computerized assessment. You will never hear me use the word test throughout our time together. It's an assessment that essentially measures how your child is performing against the K through 12 standards. The second part of iReady is all the reports that the teacher receives after the student is assessed to help provide very specific instruction for your children, and then also some goals for them. And our goal is to ensure that every single child is receiving that very specific targeted instruction. Your children are so unique, have tremendous strengths, and also we have to ensure that we know where their areas of growth are so that the educators can focus on that. The third part, some schools have this component and some schools don't. There is this personalized instructional pathway. And what that is it's a program essentially where the students log in and they work on lessons. Some of you might have seen iReady lessons, these iReady lessons. It is very specific and unique to them. So there are no 2 children that will ever have the same lesson pathway. That's because there will never be 2 children that will actually take the same assessment. That's how unique it is. And then the last component is resources for small group and whole group instruction. I want to be very clear. D25 uses specific curriculum for ELA and for reading. We offer support to ensure that if they have children that need to basically close the holes or accelerate them, we give resources for small group as well as whole class. So that is what iReady is. Schools in D25 use it in a different way, but every single person is using the assessment component. And that is what we are going to lean into today. So, first of all, I stated to you that this is not a test. Let me say that again. This is not a test. Tests are for grades. Tests are for report cards. It is an assessment, and the assessment is really about teaching and learning. That's really what we focus on. And it's not just simply to give your child a score, and it's not used to determine anything for the student as far as like high stakes decisions. So I want to be clear about that. So how does it work? When a child logs in to the computerized adaptive assessment, so it's computer-based, they get a first question. The first time they take the assessment, so that's typically in late September or early October, the very first time they will get a question at their grade level. So let me be clear what that means. If a child is sitting in 3rd grade, they're going to get a 2nd grade question. If a child is sitting in 5th grade, they're going to get a 4th grade question. And the reason why that is because it's the beginning of the year, and they should, in theory, right, be having been exposed to all of those standards. However, thereafter, the diagnostic adapts or changes based on how the student responds. So if students are getting questions right, the questions get harder. I see some of you nodding. And some of your children may have said the questions are really hard. And that's okay. And if the students demonstrate that they're having difficulty in a particular skill or standard, the questions will get easier. It goes through this up and down for about 80 to 90 questions until we get that just right placement for students. And it does this against different domains, which I will explain to you what they are. So your takeaway from what I just said is that some of the questions are going to be hard, some of the questions are going to be easy, and some of the questions are going to feel just right. We have a very, very fancy term for that in education. It's called the zone of proximal development, and that basically means where the teachers need to teach. And that's what we're trying to figure out. So I want you parents to know that in actuality, a diagnostic works when students get questions wrong. Just think about that. Because if they're getting the questions wrong, that's exactly where the teacher needs to lean into instruction. So what do we measure? What is it that we're looking at? In reading, we have what we call the pillars of reading. As Dr. Mike stated, this district is using iReady for ELA for reading grades 3 to 8. However, there are some schools that are using it for K through 2. And that's probably because they have personalized instruction and they want to get the students on that personalized tutor. First and foremost, we look at phonological awareness, phonics, vocabulary, and comprehension. Now, the reason why I want to explain these different components to you, because I'm going to walk you through the family report, but if you're getting a report with these domains on it and you don't know what they mean, it's going to be harder to understand what it is that we are trying to measure. So I just want to level set, make sure you all, when you get the reports, you know what it is that we're looking at. So very quickly, phonological awareness essentially means before children learn to read, they learn language by hearing it, right? Whether it's Spanish, whether it's Chinese, whether it's English, we learn language by sound. And so in phonological awareness, the questions are really asking the child whether they can hear certain sounds or parts of sounds. So even though if the child cannot read bat, cat, that, they may not be able to read it. They know that the end sounds are the same. That's just one example. By the time they're maybe 2 to 4 years old, they start realizing these sounds are represented by certain symbols. We call that phonics, right? So the B sound is represented by a B. This is the beginning of reading. The next pillar that we look at is high-frequency words. These are very small words in English that basically mean a lot because they're kind of like the glue of the English language. They appear a lot. That's why they're called high-frequency. Words like of and I and then and that. Very small words that appear a lot. My parents, my friends, I'm going to tell you the most important domain is vocabulary. And vocabulary is just about words. English is very fussy and it's very finicky. There's a million ways to say the same things in English. And so as the children become better readers, we want them to use and read and be able to understand not just that the character is sad, but that the character is dejected. The character is forlorn. Vocabulary is a huge, huge part. And then the last piece of it is comprehension. Do they understand what they read? In math, we look at numbers and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, and geometry. Let me quickly explain to you what these domains mean. Numbers and operations, it's all about number sense. Do they know how to count? Do they know how to recognize the numbers? Do they understand that 10 is the same as 9 plus 1 or 11 minus 1, right? There's a million ways to make a 10. There's a million ways to represent a 10. Then we go into algebra, which is all about it's more conceptual understanding of math, and algebra is the most important domain as the students, especially by 8th grade and even beyond, because it is a deeper, more abstract way to look at mathematics. Measurement and data, it's all about information. How is information represented? Those are graphs. Those are the tools that we use to measure. So if your children are interested in any career, so for example, in mathematics, in the social sciences, if they're interested in data, big data, representing data, measurement and data is going to be a very important domain for them. And then finally, geometry. Geometry is the branch of mathematics. It's not just about figures and circles and squares and triangles, but it's about measuring angles. It's about measuring sides. If your children are interested in being architects or engineers, this is going to be a very important domain for them. So those are the 4 domains that we look at in math. Now, when you get your family report, you are going to see all of these domains, but you're also going to see whether or not your children hit a growth target. So I want to be clear what this means. And it goes back to the idea that the assessment is unique for every child. Every single child will get a goal, a growth target, how we would want them to grow throughout the whole year. As was explained to you, we have just finished our 2nd diagnostic. So now you're going to be able to see how your children have grown from the beginning of the year to now mid-year, and whether or not they are meeting their growth goals. Now, I want to be clear though, because if for whatever reason you see that your child did not grow, do not think that there's no learning and growth happening in the classroom. This is one day in your child's life. It is one assessment. And I tell teachers a million times a day, one assessment is not going to be the only way that we measure the totality of your children, right? And it's really, really important to remember that. However, it is important to use the data because we can use so much data to help you make your decisions on behalf of the students. So let's take a look at what this growth report is going to look like, or the 4 families report. You're going to see, is this clear for you all? Is it clear? Too small? Me. Is that better?
Yeah.
Awesome. You are going to see blue bars. So by the way, my friends, this is measurement and data right here, how data is expressed. And so what these blue bars mean, they actually represent where your child began at the beginning of the year and how they are now being assessed on the diagnostic. So that blue bar corresponds to what we call a level, a placement level. So for some of your children, you're going to see they're either at grade level, above grade level, approaching grade level, or needs improvement. What you're also going to see on the 4 families report is something called a national percentile, a national norm. And what this is actually representative of how your child is performing against the millions of other students on that same grade. And this just gives you an idea of how the children are performing against other children. Now this becomes really important, especially in high school when they're applying for college, but we also, our belief is national national norms are important, but what's more important are standards. And so I don't want you to look at that percentage and think, oh, X amount of children are better than or worse than my child. That is not the point here. We just want to give you as much information as possible to continue to promote your child's success in learning. What I really love about this report is on the very bottom of the report, you are going to get a lot of information about those domains that I explained to you and exactly what the teacher will be working on. So, for example, if your child needs specific work on vocabulary, the teacher would see this information and say, okay, how can I develop the oral language development of the child, the written language development of the child, the expressive language, but also the receptive language, being able to read academic words and construct meaning of the text. So what's really great about this report is the second half of the report I feel is much more important, because for you as parents, you can ask the children as well as the teacher, how can I support? What are you working on? What are the specific next steps? Because that's how our children will grow. So that is essentially what the family report is. And I do want to just open it up to questions, because I'm sure that there might be questions. So there are two ways to get the Ford Family Report. One is directly from the teacher, and I know some schools do have a system in place, whether it's on parent-teacher conference, or they mail them home, or they have just, I think it's like a one-on-one, like parent-teacher conference. But I also think that for some schools, they have given you a code for you to access the family report directly on your child's dashboard. So you can do it in several ways. It depends on the school.
Yeah, if for some reason you don't have access or you haven't received the reports coming home to you, please make sure you touch base with your school and your building leader, your assistant principal, and teacher, because that information is really important for you guys to have as parents. And if that's the case, it's also just a reason for me to follow up with all of our schools to make sure that you're getting them. The assessments are only as good as their use. You know, if we're not using them as well as we possibly can, then we have to start making some adjustments there too. So just something for you guys to keep in mind, that you should be receiving these from your school.
I have a clarifying question, because as building policy, my end, I'm not sure what parents on there. The question that I have is, so we purchased the instructional piece as well. If students log in, you guys, I read instruction. Can the parents see the report from there? If so, would there be a way to just quickly show the parents how to do that? I don't know if that's possible.
Yes. So if you are in a school like 107 that has a personalized instruction component, remember I stated there are several pieces of this identify. If you have the component where children are logging in and they are working on their lessons, you can absolutely, and we encourage you to work with your children so you see what they're working on, and it will tell you exactly, if you go to My Progress, I see some of you shaking your heads. You will see exactly the lessons that they're working on, the skills that they're working on. You will see whether they've passed or whether they have not passed their lessons. And that's really important for you, again, to continue that conversation with the teachers, because the teachers are absolutely using the data for their small group instruction. This is not just put the child on a computer and think the computer is a teacher. We very strongly do not believe that can ever be the case, but it's just one piece of the pie.
So, I have seen that My Progress area in my child's app, but the part that you just showed, like how they're doing in the blue bar, does that only happen during those like assessment periods? Okay.
Yes, that's exactly right. So the Department of Education 3 times a year: September, October, January, February, and then May and June.
You should see it now, the growth, because now there's a second assessment. So now you should be able to see. Originally, you should see the target, but now you'll be able to see, are they making it?
Performed in relation to the target.
Thank you.
The My Progress section also has results from the diagnostic assessment. It's like a number.
The number.
What can we, is there anything we can do with that?
The number, I'm going to be honest with you, the number doesn't mean much for the child unless, what we also say is to ensure that it's, we call it learning conversations or dating chats are happening, because it's just a number. But really, we ask the teacher to explain to the child what that number means, and that number correlates to a placement level.
So is there, because when I looked online, I see like charts, but nothing on here, I talked about, but nothing in New York. I think there's stuff in like Florida or whatever, but it looks like it's a, this number is like, 99 percentile, this number, is there, do we have anything that we can compare that number to until we get, because we haven't gotten
We certainly do. I mean, I'm happy in my follow-up, we go through the follow-up email and just an overview of this, and I can send that to the T25 team. But we do have what those placement levels mean. If you are suffering from insomnia, you'd like to read 30 chocolate, you certainly do that, but yes, we have that information for you.
you can send that out.
I will send that out. I will send that out to.
And we'll post it on our DQ5 site as well for any other folks that want access to it as well.
I don't think I necessarily have a question, but I have somewhat of a concern. So I do the evaluation with my child every night. She seems to be doing well, like everything she gets 100. But then we get this assessment at home, and then it's not as good as I thought. So I don't know, how, I don't know, what the question is, how would it, how does it relate, how does it correlate with, I don't know, results or something, how,
So as a school who's been using it for quite a while, one thing that is important to note, and I know Sally was saying, your child is getting assessed based on where they are at. The activities that then are, if they're doing the instructional piece, the activities they're doing are at their level, right? So we're hoping for them to be passing those. Now, when it comes to this the greater scale of, are they on level, below grade level, very below grade level, like the red stripe, the red, the green, the yellow, that's gonna be based on the grade level, right? So as an example, I have my son Matthew, let's just use as an example. He might show as striped red in iReady because he is more than 2 levels below grade level. He's getting activities done at maybe kindergarten level, even though he's a 2nd grader. He's actually 17 years old. That's a whole different problem in life. But if he were in 2nd grade, but getting kindergarten level things, he might be starting to show mastery there. So everything is smooth and looking good. And then I get an assessment result that still says he's 2 grade levels below. And we've had that here in our school where we're looking at students where we're making great gains. If you look at their growth, they hit stretch growth, which is really great for mid-year. However, they're still showing in the red simply because their starting point was 2 or more levels below the grade level. So don't be discouraged by, and this is what I share with my families and my staff, do not be discouraged by the grade level necessarily. Be encouraged by the growth, right? So if you're seeing growth on that pathway, that's more important because growth has to happen in order to get to that mastery level. If we see stagnant and they're not making growth, then that's a greater concern. So I don't have your child seat in front of me, but that's what I would say is look for that growth. That growth means a lot more than the mastery at a grade level because they could be starting at a different point.
I also think that we do promise that will contribute to growth. But again, when I say it's not coming here, we want all the pieces together is going to contribute to that child's individual goal. All pieces together.
Should I be concerned if it's below?
No,
No, can I answer just from a parent perspective? Because when my children were on taking leave, they no longer take this assessment.
they're
But
both
when
on
they
it,
were on
and
it,
I want my son in particular, who never, just it didn't correlate to what I was seeing. You want to ask the question, why is there a discrepancy? I think that's a very important conversation to have, because remember, this is computerized assessment. It's very important to think about, and to put it in greater context, right? I'm happy to talk offline if you have any other questions.
Hi, yeah, I appreciate this presentation. Actually, I'm very familiar to summative assessment, the formative assessment. Yeah, so I wonder what the relationship between this diagnostic assessment and what is this IRB program with the informative assessment? Yeah, I believe formative assessment is very important. So I wonder what is the link between this. And also I have some proposal because this is the first time we came to understanding here. So I wonder whether you can send us some documents before we come here so we can understand what is this about.
The purpose, oh, thank you, it's a great question, very nuanced question. The purpose of
this particular assessment
is
is
to
to
give
give as much comprehensive data
as
as
quickly
quickly
as
as
possible
possible to the teacher. Because those 4 domains in math and those 5 domains in reading, it would take a teacher the whole year to get that information. We give them that information as efficiently as we can so that they can use their formative assessment data, which is what teachers gather every single day, the questions, the group work, the exit slips, all the work that your children are doing to see if the children are responding to the teaching, right? It's that connection between teaching and learning. So this is just to get as much data as possible into their hands so that they can then use their formative assessment to ultimately help the child reach their growth target. That's the connection between those 2 things.
I got thumbs up.
Hi, I was wondering, you said that the assessments are 80 to 90 questions
Across the domains.
across the domains.
That's general. Can I just add a little asterisk to that? The younger students won't have to sit through that writing because, first of all, we're going to torture them. But also, it's going to be a lot more IT questions, like,
For example, identifying a letter, identifying a sound. But let me also say, this is not a staff-based test.
The message board are actually happening over multiple sessions, multiple days. Children should not be sitting with this
one time.
Okay, and also, especially, I mean, all the grades, but especially concentrating on the younger ones, when they get questions wrong, is that indicated to them in the assessment? Like, do they get like an X, or do they get a check if they got it right, or do they just move on?
No checks, no X's. Calibrates up and down until it tries to find a comfortable spot for the student, and then we really lean into that, and then the questions get very, very specific, and that's how we determine our placements.
Okay, so for a struggling student, if they were struggling through this assessment, they wouldn't necessarily be getting like.
Oh God, no.
No.
Like any assessment.
And they're not gonna homework, because on the homework assignments, they are told that they got the incorrect answer, and it actually is an X that they get. And for a struggling kid, it's not great for their confidence.
No, and I think that's where the conversation and growth mindset really come into play. We do want the children to know what they need to work on, but we certainly don't want them to internalize that. It's never our goal.
I have a question. So, for you said every child gets a unique set of questions, so they also get a unique number of questions as well, because I could only imagine if they get it wrong, that they're given like other additional opportunities to like get it right, and then you guys calibrate to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So not every student is getting the same number of questions. And I will tell you, the diagnostic wants to be efficient. All adaptive trainers want to be efficient. And so the best way for us to get efficient data quickly is when students take it seriously. Because it's trying to figure out who the child is and be a longer process.
So, just kind of rule of thumb is that they are given multiple chances at a certain level of questions. So like if they get it wrong, they're given an additional opportunity for them to retake that level of questionnaire.
So for the personalized instruction, they get multiple attempts on the lesson. However, we're talking about the diagnostic assessment. When you say multiple attempts on the same question, it depends. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm trying to think about how that can work in my head. If the student gets questions correctly, it's not going to keep asking them a specific question on that standard that's going to move on. It wants to move on.
It's kind of like SATs.
No, absolutely nothing to do with the SAT. It's completely different. That's a formally distributed assessment, not against standards, that works on the bell curve. So it's not the same.
Thank you. I actually have additional questions. So does the iReady report that we get as parents, is that the same as that of the teachers? Or our version is more packaged?
No, the teacher version, you can ask for the iReady diagnostic, which is very teacher heavy, a lot of teacher lingo. You can ask to see it, important instruction.
Interesting. Because then my concern is like, so if every child gets their own like results of like things that they need to work on, there's one teacher to so many students. So like, how does that kind of translate into their?
You said a mouthful there.
There's a class report, right?
Like local administrator, but I do want to know like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so one of the fortunate things around iReady is that it will take all of this information across a class and across the school for that matter, and then it will organize kids into specific groups based on identified needs from the iReady assessment. And within those groups, there are specified things that our children may not have mastered within that group window. For some of our younger kids, it might be some of the foundational literacy skills and standards, i.e. they might have some phonics issues and decoding issues as a third grader. And for me as a teacher, it's important for me to know, so as I'm organizing my lesson, both in the space of tier 1, here's my regular lesson, I'm going to infuse some things that include some decoding, but also when I create my small group learning experiences, I'm bringing some of that into the mix as well to really help target some of the experiences for our kids.
Follow-up question, do you guys use this for the GNT selection?
Say again?
Do you guys use these more for GNT selection?
No. This is the purpose of iReady for certainly for me is how do we make sure that we can maximize the potential of every single one of our kids? What are we learning from the assessment for a kid that is mid or above grade level or a child who's currently below? What are we learning from it and how do we organize our instruction as best as we possibly can to really help elevate the outcomes for our kids? That's really the way that I look at this particular assessment and others that are like it. For our kids that are in kindergarten through second grade, they do have a different assessment for reading, which is similar in nature where we're trying to get to the meat of how do we get our kids to be readers by the time they're in third grade. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question. What are your thoughts in terms of using now iReady as a means to adding to the workload on the homework end? So for example, I see how it can be beneficial to add maybe 30 minutes of the day or whatever, but when does it kind of time out in terms of its effectiveness? If we're saying, for example, they should be on all week for 150 minutes on one topic, I said it
and 90 minutes on another subject throughout the week. When does it time out?
So are you referring to when we reach our saturation point? Where the program itself will allow kids to continue to
Let
work.
it keep going.
But the
That
saturation,
mandate being given to a child or to a grade level, for example, that this is something that should be added in addition to their everyday, their subject areas.
Yeah.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now, I'm coming home with, let's say, ELA work, but now I got to meet a 90-minute weekly mandate.
yeah, so,
I'm
yeah.
just saying it in general, I'm not specific.
So we are very, very careful.
Very careful on the guidance that we give, and we say that they should be on higher personalized instruction.
30 to 45
minutes
A week. And I'm just gonna add that
I'll leave it at that.
it is my opinion, as we saw as a district, not just at 107, but as a district, a few years back when we were all online and had to do iReady online, one of the findings was our third graders were well above grade level. I mean, our kindergartners were well above. I know some of you were in my SLT and were like, wow. And then we realized, and that's actually when we got iReady to come for our parent meeting, that many parents were helping their kindergartners do iReady. For that same reason, we prefer for iReady to not necessarily be done at home, but to be done as part of the center activities within the class, the digital center, for 30 minutes through the course of the week. Why? Because then we have knowledge that this is being done by the student in their time and as part of one of the digital centers, as opposed to at home where they may be receiving additional help, and then that information we're getting will not be accurate.
Yeah, and I think everything has its saturation point, and the numbers that you're talking about is something that perhaps can engage in other conversations around what that can look like moving forward, because
So maybe
I know.
we'll have more conversations
Yeah.
on that. It's
Yeah.
certainly not the platform for it, but it's good to hear what Curriculum Associates is saying would be the max amount of time per week at home a student should probably be engaging in either of those subjects.
Yeah, at least, listen, my son's in 7th grade, and I can tell you, it's a struggle, but sometimes he comes home, he's like, yeah, Dad, I'm done. I'm like, well, what is actually done? I don't know what you did. But having him go to an extended period of time, I know would be a struggle as well. So I get it. I think it's an important conversation. Yeah.
Thank you.
He has the name Matthew well. Yeah, but that's an important point. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for your time.
So, iReady is something that I also use as my benchmarking tool. And I use it 3 times a year as well. You'll see me do a state of the district at the CEC. You'll see me do it at President's Council as a means of getting an idea of where are our kids. Kind of like, how are the children? This gives me a baseline of where our children are performing. What are some things that we have to think about at the school level and the classroom level to ensure that our kids are as successful as we possibly can be. So today the intent was really to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions, and Sally will still remain here for anyone else that has those particular questions about iReady, because it is a tool that I encourage you, if you're not sure how to use as a parent, you have your parent coordinator here that can connect with iReady at any time. You have Ms. Cummings. If you're not from 107 and you're from 193 or you're from 32, your principals and assistant principals know how to access all of this information. It's only as good as its use. If we as parents and educators are not aware of all of the ins and outs of it, then it'll be just something that our kids do. And much like Matthew, you'll go on, you'll do it, say check mark, Dad, yeah, I did it, without the effort that's necessary to succeed. So just be mindful of that as parents, and I also encourage you, provide some of that feedback. What are the things that we can do better to make sure that things are as accessible to you as possible? Because that's what I want to be able to do for you. This meeting was an outgrowth simply because a parent said, we need to do this. So 5 minutes later, we knocked on the door of iReady and we organized. That's the way that I operate. You know, you share that there's a need, we're gonna offer inside of that need. But I don't do that based on the things that you share back. You know, so if we need more of these, if we need to get the laptops out, you sitting in front of the laptop, getting on there with your kids, we can do that too. But yeah.
More than willing to, because we have 3 years of experience, we need
Yep.
help from either I and external parents through, because we've done this for years.
Yeah.
These are not state exams, right? These
No.
are- And so how do they align? Are they similar, like at that age when they're ready?
So what the assessments will do is it gives a projection. Projection in terms of whether or not a child will meet standards or not. Those projections, you know, they do vary, but we have seen alignment between children and their performance on an iReady assessment and then performance on a state exam. So there is a relationship there. Can I say it's always one-to-one? Not necessarily one-to-one, but it does give you a picture of where your child might fall. Yeah. Any other questions? Thoughts, comments? Future sessions? Hurry up, Mike, I need to get home, it's gonna snow tomorrow. Okay. But I will remain, yeah.
I think this is a useful type of conversation to have at the beginning of the school year so that families can kind of understand what to expect and to look out for those family reports so that they can kind of guide their kids and understand what the assessment measures.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, some of our schools, this is part of their routine. The reason why we did this one in particular, because it was brought up, and we wanted to make sure that the message was being shared. But I agree. I think that's something that we can do. I did this with the Acadians assessment in October, just to raise that conversation during the CEC. But yeah, 100%. We can do this and honestly, as frequently. You know, just because you sit through this once doesn't mean that you now know everything there is to know about an assessment, or for that matter, what you can do with it as a parent. So we can do these as frequently as necessary for our community. But thank you for that. I think that's important, yeah.
I had no
Other
idea
questions?
what this was because I'm coming from Long Island.
Yeah.
So when I first got this, I was like, is this a state exam? Because that was my first reaction to something so formal. And there was no pretext as to what this was about. They were just telling me my child is hitting or not hitting, and there were
Yeah, the assessment
very
itself, you mean?
Yes, and there was a very
In her report.
personalized comment at the end. So I was like, is this a report card? But I don't think it was because when I questioned during my PTA meeting with my son's teacher, she was like, no, this is not. But then I had no idea, and that kind of put me at kind of a panic mode because coming from a totally different kind of
Scenario,
curriculum,
yeah.
where it was like, you're not given this information like mid-day, I don't know, like in between semester, you're given a certain period. So I think that is a really good idea to kind of introduce this to the public or to.
Well, you know, and I think too is just making sure that the information is being shared widely.
That's true, yeah.
You know, aside from just having this type of an event, that a parent receiving a report and I don't know what to do with the report.
Yeah, I just thought of.
You know, so I think that's something else for me to really reflect on for our schools to ensure that everyone's getting what they need as parents.
That's
Yeah.
lovely, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any other comments? All right, guys, well, I thank you so much for being here. I will remain. For anyone who has a comment or question you want to come up and ask me personally, you're welcome to do that. And we're gonna send, Louis is gonna send a feedback form out to all of you for you to share any of your comments that you have for us to do these things. This is another round. If you want other types of supports from the district, just to let us know. Okay? Thank you, guys. This is great. I appreciate you. Thank you.